everybody, and welcome back to the United Stand. I am joined by Ben Jacobs, transfer expert and regular on the United Stand shows every Thursday. Come and join us. And today we're talking all things Manchester United, deadline day, future plans, feelings in and around the club. Michael Carrick. Ben, welcome.
Great to be back, and the mood has changed under Michael Carrick dramatically. What a win it was against Arsenal, and again, my prediction was just off. Remember when I said that Bournemouth would be 4-3?
Yeah.
Bournemouth got a late goal, 4-4. I was like, damn it, nearly got an absolute worldie of a prediction. Well, I said 2-2, and it was 2-2, and I was thinking, okay, this is going to be one I gloat about, but even better for Man United fans with that Cunha winner.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. I'm flying high at the moment, Ben. I'm on cloud 9 and I'm not coming down just yet. We will get your score prediction in for Fulham as well at the end of the show. Hopefully Michael Carrick can make it 3-3 and still unbeaten as Manchester United manager from last time and this time round as well, 5 years later. Very, very interesting. I mean, let's begin with that actually. We've got so much transfer talk to get into, but let's begin with Michael Carrick. What is the mood around him and his coaching staff, because he's brought in Jonathan Woodgate, Steve Holland is there, and we're hearing quite glowing reports about his training, his management. What is the feeling inside the club around what Michael Carrick is bringing and that upturn in form as well?
Yeah, I think perversely it's been less physically intense than a Ruben Amorim training session, but more kind of emotionally intense in the sense that Carrick is looking to imprint upon these players what it actually means to be Manchester United, to be a serial winner. So a lot of time has been taken to kind of build up players individually and collectively to try and get them to flick that switch, to be mentally tougher in games and have that more team-orientated chemistry. Amorim's sessions were very sports science focused. They were very physically demanding and intense. And some players said they were quite repetitive, although Amorim's perspective is that training is repetitive because when you're doing things right, it leads to a consistent and a winning formula, but it's a little bit more varied and perhaps some players would acknowledge creative under Michael Carrick. And it's not just about what they do on training with a football. There's a heavier emphasis around building that team culture and chemistry and collectiveness, which has led to a very instant upturn in results, coupled, of course, with a system change and the introduction of Kobbie Mainoo. And I think a lot of players, much like Man United fans, were very favourable towards Kobbie Mainoo and maybe baffled as to why he wasn't getting more first team opportunities. So that was very low hanging fruit, an easy win, and it made tactical sense as well to reintegrate him and to start to give him games. And that started in the Manchester derby when he was outstanding as well. So players know where they stand with Michael Carrick. The mood has changed dramatically. It's not to say it was all doom and gloom under Amorim. He had a lot of allies, including the captain Bruno Fernandes, but the change has definitely created, at least in the short term, the impact that Manchester United were looking for. And if they can continue this momentum, then they should be firmly in the picture for Champions League football.
That's exactly what we want. And off the back of that, Ben, I know it's extremely early days, but the conversations are already beginning. If Michael Carrick did carry on this run of good form and kind of proved himself to be able to get results for Manchester United, get Champions League football, do you think he would be considered for the Manchester United job permanently?
Yeah, I'm led to believe they're going to do a thorough process, and that will not be influenced necessarily by what Carrick does on the football field. Could he force his way into the equation as a coach or as a senior member of the first team staff if whoever comes in? Potentially. And if they won every game and they continue to perform like they did in the Manchester derby and against Arsenal, there'll be a lot of waves of support, probably externally from the fan base, to at least consider him. But the point is, Carrick doesn't necessarily have it in his hands at the moment. Maybe the option is there under extraordinary and very positive circumstances. But at interview, my information is that Manchester United told Michael Carrick quite clearly, we're going to run this process. It's going to start whilst you're in situ. We're going to hope that you can build continuity towards whoever comes in, and it will be thorough and extensive because they've got plenty of time. So regardless of what Carrick does, several candidates are going to be interviewed, and there will be those with more experience and perhaps even appeal, regardless of how Carrick does on the football field, the likes of Roberto De Zerbi and Thomas Tuchel, for example. And I think what goes for Carrick is there's this instant shift in both performances and cultural change. What goes against him is he's only got the Premier League to work with. So if it was Champions League, if he could win silverware on multiple fronts, then you can really make a statement. But Ruben Amorim didn't actually leave Manchester United in a dreadful league position. They were just inconsistent. And if Carrick can build on that and get top 4 or top 5, of course, that will be an outstanding achievement. But it's the manner in which he does it. It's one thing sneaking in there, and then they would likely move on to another manager and applaud the job he's done. It's another thing if he basically wins every single game. If they're the top team in the form table between now and the end of the season, you'd be remiss not to give Carrick an interview and include him in the process as well. So Carrick can force his way into this process. But the starting point when he came in before a ball was kicked was all about, even though he doesn't carry the title, caretaker only, whilst they run this more extensive and thorough process.
Interesting stuff. I mean, I'm going to circle back to the manager situation at the end, just to have a quick update on it. But with Carrick doing well, and I found it interesting in the last game against Arsenal, he didn't bring on a midfielder for Casemiro and Mainu. They played the full game. And there's a lot of talk about Manchester United. Will they, won't they go for a midfielder in the January window? Currently, as we speak, I mean, with deadline date on Monday, do you think Manchester United will try and back Carrick? I know we mentioned about a conversation with Carrick on what he wanted. Is there any updates on that?
Yeah, at the moment, the Manchester United position has been consistent all month, and I think it's just bracing themselves. So if they do nothing, it's very clear that that was their default, which is partly why Ruben Amorim was frustrated after that fallout with Jason Wilcox. But there's been meetings last week specifically relating to, is there any late window opportunism? So if something happens, it will kind of go against the grain and be a surprise, but it's not to say that they've ruled it out entirely. And that's why they're scouring the market for options. They were offered the ability to sign Ruben Loftus-Cheek. They didn't want to go down that route. With Wilfred Ndidi, the feeling was that there might be a loan potentially with a buy option in and around the £10 million mark. Unfortunately and tragically, Ndidi lost his father in a car crash only about 5-7 days ago. So I think at this point, Ndidi's not thinking about anything except family, and rightly so. And we all, of course, wish him our best. And there's other midfielders in that sort of bracket. Ruben Neves in the early part of the window, but too expensive and could sign a new deal at Al Hilal. There was nothing really in the James Garner stuff, and he's now signed a new deal at Everton. João Gomez is a player that Manchester United appreciates, but Wolves are really only likely to sell one this window of Jurgen Strand-Larsen or João Gomez. They haven't had any offers for João Gomez, and Jurgen Strand-Larsen looks like he's heading for Crystal Palace. So it might end up being quiet. And that's why when I spoke about the midfielder, I didn't put the name out there. I didn't say anything advanced club to club, because it was an internal exploration where they were asking for terms on several players to put to Carrick. And if they bring in someone at the last minute, it will be the byproduct of those meetings that Carrick has been directly involved in, acting as the head coach, not just the caretaker, because that's his title. And if they do nothing, it'll be back to where they started, go all in on 2 senior midfielders in the summer. Casemiro, we now know, is departing, and a quiet window isn't necessarily a bad window if Manchester United can continue this momentum, coupled with the fact that now in central midfield, you got Kobbie Mainoo starting and playing in games and doing really well. There's a slight question mark over Manuel Ugarte, not one I'm expecting to be an outgoing between now and February the 2nd, but Ajax made an inquiry, and for this window as well. So we should keep an eye on Manchester United until the final minutes of the window, because this is the time when you get a merry-go-round and an opportunity suddenly opens up at value, or one that you thought wouldn't be available, but maybe the club have found a name to come in. So they go, okay, we'll call you up and we're going to sanction this sale or this loan. And as a consequence, Manchester United will be alert to opportunities. But if nothing happens, then I think it's fair to say it will be down to the fact that Manchester United just don't want to panic buy.
Yeah, I can kind of understand that perspective, but at the same time, I mean, first of all, as well wishes to Ndidi. I mean, that's horrible news, and thoughts are with him on that. I mean, very, very sad to hear about. But in terms of when I look at the midfield, and it's brilliant that Kobbie Mainoo's come in and done really well. I mean, I'm just kind of thinking off the back of, the Arsenal game, and I thought to myself, with Dorgu's injury sadly now out for could be 10 weeks, if that happened, hope it doesn't, touch wood, but if it did happen to a Casemiro or a Mainu, which it could happen, which we hope it doesn't, Man United could be really struggling then in the midfield, and it just makes you think, is it good to have that backup option? But I suppose we'll see what Manchester United does with that. And then with Patrick Dorgu, was there any thought of to maybe bring someone in because of his injury?
Yeah, again, they've been looking there, and that's more like a long-term summer plan. I'm not aware of them advancing necessarily to anything at this point to get excited about. I know that there's a lot of reports out there speaking in particular about Mohamed Ked and Mete, who's more in the sort of forward market, if you like, but can play in a variety of positions, and he wouldn't be a Dorgu replacement, but would be another sort of body that can play versatilely in a more advanced position, which is what Dorgu has had the opportunity to do in recent games. Manchester United sources sort of downplayed to me the idea that you'd strike a deal with Rennes in the next few days there. So nothing like for Dorgu, but a few names, particularly one or two young players that are attackers and versatile, and a bit like they planned for Semenya, could be converted from a 9 or a winger into a slightly deeper or full-back type position. That's been discussed by Manchester United as well, but they all feel like quite long-term targets that are not necessarily that gettable between now and February the 2nd. And I take your point about the injuries, and I'm sure Manchester United are thinking that through too. But if you're only bringing in a player and saying to them, you might not get game time unless we get injuries, or if you're trying to find a player that can fit into a squad role and therefore you need to go down the route of a loan, there's not actually that many players available in the market that sort of tick those boxes. Douglas Luiz was never considered by Manchester United because their intel was that if Villa came calling, he would only want to go there. So that wasn't one that they tried. But it's that kind of profile or that kind of position where there's a few clubs that have been able to get temporary deals over the line, like Villa and Luis, but not that many. And as I say, I think Neves could easily sign a new deal at Al Hilal, even if Manchester United wanted to commit to those finances. So I can kind of sympathise with why they're not panic buying. And some of the names out there, like Loftus-Cheek or even Ndidi, if you ask the fans, they're not that excited by them. So sometimes nothing can be better than something, and something can be a little bit underwhelming, and then you're throwing money down the drain instead of investing it during the summer.
Yeah, I also wanted to ask you, because I was doing a show the other day and I spoke to you a little bit about this, and a lot of the viewers wanted to know more detail. If there was anything that you heard about Ndidi, because he got linked to Manchester United just after that Dorgu injury. I know they're different players, but both playing that forward sort of role, and Ndiaye is a different profile to Dorgu. But is there anything in that? Because it came out of left field a little bit.
Yeah, as you say, they did have an interest in Ndiaye over the summer, and he's had a very positive start to his season at Everton, hugely influential. Obviously, their perspective is quite simply not for sale. He was off at AFCON and a big miss, and then you had the injury to Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall against Chelsea, who had started the season brilliantly for Everton. So they've got no interest in selling. He's well contracted until June 2029. And I'm actually told that Everton, once this window shuts, might start talks to try and agree fresh terms. The other thing is that his natural role is a right winger, where Manchester United are quite well stocked. He can, of course, play with freedom through the centre, but you've got Bruno Fernandes, Cunha and Mbeumo. So you create a situation where he'd have to shift left, which he's capable of, or alternatively, somebody like Cunha might get pushed out wide or up front to create the space for a player like that. So I repeat what I've said before. I'm told the two kind of profiles they're looking for are an out-and-out defined number 6, a real kind of destroyer that's quite rigid and disciplined. And now that's quite a fashionable role because of players like Rodri. And then second of all, somebody that is more energetic and box to box and can get into that 8 position, but not necessarily somebody with goal contributions. And I think that's significant. So I'm not saying that they shouldn't be able to score, but I don't think they'll necessarily be looking for an 8 come 10. I think it's a 6 and a 6 come 8. And many 6s and 8s, a little bit like a Declan Rice or an Elliot Anderson, they chip in with goals, but they're not necessarily 10, 15 goal contributions a season. And Jai, for me, is a little bit more gung-ho. He's a little bit more, or a lot more creative than those players that I've mentioned. And he's far more capable of chipping in. And actually, I think Manchester United feel they've got enough goal contributions in that final third, even if they do end up adding another 9 during the summer. The 2 midfielders they're looking for are to create that engine room, ball winners, progressive passers, speed, tackling, aerial duels, holding up the ball. These are the qualities that they're looking for. And it's only a personal opinion. I'm not quite sure Njai, who's a ball runner, not a ball winner, necessarily fits that bill.
Yeah, I mean, moving on to the midfield, because I kind of want to talk a little bit more about the long-term targets. Amit said 3 deadly midfield combo is Mainu, Wharton and Anderson. I wanted to ask you a little bit about Adam Wharton, because there was varied reports. There were certain reports that were saying that the deal's already done with Liverpool for the summer. And then there was also, I think Mark spoke about on his show this morning, that Liverpool aren't really going to go for that sort of profile, and it doesn't seem like Wharton and Liverpool could be a match in the summer, and that gives Manchester United a better run at it. I mean, where is Wharton at? Is there anything with Liverpool? Is he still on the radar of Manchester United?
Yeah, it's kind of fake news that Liverpool have agreed a deal for Adam Wharton. I respect the reporting of others, but my info is that there's no 5-year deal. It's not predetermined that Wharton is going to Liverpool. Crystal Palace, by the way, would love to extend his contract, but Wharton wants to play Champions League football, so summer might end up being a natural parting of ways, but I'm not aware of Liverpool making a move yet for Adam Wharton. And I've said many times, I think if Liverpool are to add another midfielder, it might be someone more like Njai, not Njai by the way, but more like his profile, and that's where somebody like Morgan Rogers comes in. So it's kind of still an open race and an early stage race for Adam Wharton. He's there on the Manchester United list. Chelsea quite like the player as well, but they may be inclined to go for someone like Elliot Anderson as well. So at this stage, Wharton could be available for sure. Let's see how Manchester United rank their midfielders, because again, we know Elliot Anderson's the top choice, but there'll be competition from likely Manchester City, possibly Bayern and maybe Chelsea as well. And then you still have Carlos Baleba, and nobody's really been put off by his start to the season. I think Manchester United feel, if anything, you might get a better deal, but they're unconcerned because they think if he moves, he can still be a player and more reflective of last season than this season so far. Angelo Stilla's still on the list as well. So Manchester United are gathering targets, and we're hearing a lot of names because it will be a combination of 2. And naturally, if Elliot Anderson is one of them, then it's going to be a huge outlay to get another through the door as well, and big competition. And Manchester United shouldn't want it any other way, really, because it's Manchester United. They should have Champions League historically, and if they get it, then you have big appeal to any player in terms of package, in terms of culture, in terms of fan base, in terms of wage. But if you're going for these big money, big name players and there's zero competition, then you start to be a little bit alarmed at the fact that you're paying so much money and why was nobody else in? So healthy competition is great, but Manchester United need to find a way to win these races. And if they get Champions League football and a top new manager in place, or they finish the season well under Michael Carrick, you would think they would be in a very strong position to attract these kind of names, because it's Manchester United. And as Cunha showed and as Mbumo showed, players will still come regardless of the situation. And if the situation on the field improves, then they're going to have a very strong hand to play in the market.
Well, it's like when Declan Rice went to Arsenal, there was a huge race with Manchester City. When Caicedo went to Chelsea, there was a big race with Liverpool, like top players that are going to improve your team massively. There is going to be competition there, but like you said, Man United have got to make sure that they win the race. I mean, I'm desperate for us to win the Elliot Anderson race, and I think Champions League football will be really, really crucial for that. And I just wanted to kind of ask you, and maybe it's opinion-based or maybe there's something behind this, but why do you think United continue to publicly link themselves to Wharton, Baleba, Anderson? Like, it's very, very public that they're the 3 names that Manchester United want, and, you know, could come to the summer and there might be other names on the list, and I'm sure there is more names that maybe aren't being spoken about. But do you think it's a deliberate strategy from them to kind of make it known early doors, these are the players we're going for?
Not necessarily. I think that journalists get the line, it gets out there, and then it's very difficult for clubs to contain it. Naturally, we'll never say who outsourcing is or what's led to us putting out a story. But as you say, it's relatively common knowledge, some of the names on the list, and which ones they get and different combinations will be informed by variables we don't yet know, including do Man United get Champions League football, who the new manager might be, and also that head-to-head with other clubs. So they have to have a deep list of targets for the reason that it will be a summer of mass midfield movement. And in that mass midfield movement, you won't win necessarily every single race. And the underrated point people forget is it's not just about does Elliot Anderson want Man United or Man City. It's about the fact that if everyone's bidding for the same names, the prices are going to hike up as well. And there'll come a point where somebody might have to overpay for one or two of these names to get it over the line. And if you overpay for the first and you're Manchester United, you might not be inclined to do the same for the second as well. So some of it's about chemistry. Some of it now, I think, is about making sure that Kobbie Mainoo has a bit of a clear pathway, and he may end up now finally coming full circle and signing a new deal. But the names are essentially out there and at volume, because Manchester United have probably got 7-8 different names on a shortlist for each of those two positions. And therefore there'll be 14-15 names that they're linked with. And even at this stage, you're making inquiries, you're trying to get the player camp on side. It's why they went early to Baleba. So if everyone else comes back in the summer, Manchester United have already turned the player's head and laid some of that groundwork. So it's quite a smart approach in that sense to try and plan and prepare for the summer as much as possible. But obviously there's a few variables that I've outlined that still make all of these sagas a little bit early to call and a little bit unpredictable.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be an interesting race come the summer when it comes to that midfield position. And then just talking about a position we spoke about on the last show, Yan Diomande, somebody that's expected to attract a lot of interest from a lot of big clubs, and we spoke about Manchester United being in that race. Do you think Patrick Dorgu, I know it's only been 2 games and now he's got an injury, so we'll have to see. He seems to be really excelling in that left wing spot. Do you think that might put a cat amongst the pigeons, or do you still expect United to really go out for a left winger come the summer?
Yeah, I think they want a left winger, even if they end up utilising a left back, as you say, in a more advanced position. And it becomes a bit of a grey area because, once again, we don't know if the new manager is going to have an identical view to Michael Carrick. So we still have to wait and see a little bit and work out how much foundations or continuity Carrick will build, and ultimately what happens in that process before we can speak long term about the role of Patrick Dorgu. But he's doing excellent. He's proving that he can score goals, and it feels like an inspired decision to use him in that more attack-minded position. With Yan Diomande, Manchester United are going to be one of the clubs, and I can tell you Tottenham will be there as well. And as I revealed a few months ago, Leipzig are looking for 100 million. Suitors feel that 60-65 might be possible, but in the summer it would be a big surprise if anybody makes any headway in the next few days. So that's going to be one to wait and see during the summer. Player I think is more likely than unlikely to leave in 2026, and it's all just whether, like with typical Red Bull outlays, Leipzig or Salzburg get their price. And to be fair, they tend to. There's not many that get bargain deals, or whether the 100 million is grandstanding, which is what suitors think it is, to ward off any winter interest, and then the real lower price in summer will then become available. So that's one to watch for Manchester United and for Tottenham as well, but I'm not expecting any movement in the final days of the window.
Don't expect Tottenham to do much competition come the summer. You know, we saw how the Mbumo saga went, but we'll see. We'll see on that one.
And he turned down, I think, the chance to go to several other clubs as well. So it wasn't just Tottenham that he rejected, and that's what I mean about the pull. Some players just want to wear the Manchester United shirt, and that's the advantage. But imagine if some players want to wear the Man United shirt and some players want to play Champions League football. If you get both, as I say, they'll be in a very strong position to negotiate in the market.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we need. And do you know what? I'm feeling pretty positive about it, Ben. I know it's only been 2 games, but I'm feeling like Champions League football is there for the taking for Manchester United. We've just got to keep going. And Fulham's
Remember one thing as well, sorry Beth, the coefficients are really in England's favour now, because I believe that all of the English sides in all the competitions are either through or on track to progress, and 5 of the 8 are English that have gone straight through to the knockout stage of the Champions League. So that makes it very likely already, even at this early stage, that 5th place will be good enough for Champions League.
Exactly, and that makes it even better for us, especially when you look at the likes of how close it is. Liverpool, Chelsea, United. We really need that 5th spot to kind of help us ensure we get Champions League football. But got to prove we can beat sides like Fulham, who are doing pretty well in the league as well at the moment. And in that Fulham game, I expect Kobbie Mainoo to be starting. I expect Maguire to be starting. I expect Bruno Fernandes to be starting. All 3 names, Ben, I've brought them up purposely because rumours about a Kobbie Mainoo new contract, rumours about Bruno Fernandes potentially getting a wage increase on a new contract. And there's also, Harry Maguire, his situation is up in the air. Is he going to leave? Is he going to get offered a new deal? I mean, have you got any updates on each of them 3 players and their future at Manchester United?
Yeah, so Harry Maguire is waiting for a formal contract extension offer after initial talks last year, and Manchester United had intentionally delayed because they're still assessing what they're going to do at centre-back again for the summer rather than now, and then it remains possible that they do offer, and quite quickly, Harry Maguire an extension. Players ready to sign, players ready to be flexible on terms, and player would like his future sorted ASAP so he can focus on the World Cup, whereas Manchester United have been a little bit cautious there. So we wait and see how quickly it moves, because it could be a very fast thing. At the moment, though, it's very much Manchester United delaying and Maguire facing a little bit of a wait as a consequence to see whether he's staying or going. Bruno Fernandes, no guarantee yet what happens in the summer. I think Fernandes is likely to focus on the World Cup and then decide what he wants to do, judging also where Manchester United are at. And even though we had that first interview in, I think it was October, sort of saying that everyone at the club supported him and he decided not to go to Saudi, the second interview said he felt hurt and that Manchester United wanted to sell. So there's not tension or anything like that. He's the club captain. He's loved by Manchester United. And after that interview came out, Man United sources said that Fernandes remains integral and part of the long-term project. So reading between the lines, there is a possibility that Manchester United get him to stay longer than next summer. But of course, there's that 60 million euros release clause that, if triggered at the right time, could also prompt an exit. And Saudi are still there, even though Bruno Fernandes said when he didn't join Al Hilal and when he spoke to Al Ittihad and also to Cristiano Ronaldo's Al Nassr that the timing wasn't right and it wasn't a good move for his family over last summer. Yet Saudi are still going to try after the World Cup, regardless of anything that happens at Manchester United, including, by the way, signing improved terms between now and the summer. Saudi still plan to try, but obviously Bruno Fernandes would have to change his mind. So that's kind of where we stand as far as Bruno Fernandes is concerned. And then with Kobbie Mainoo, obviously it's kind of come full circle now at the moment, and Mainoo was able to outlast Ruben Amorim. So we're back to where we started again, where Mainoo would like to extend, and he's happy to extend if he's playing. And Manchester United are happy to extend Kobbie Mainoo if, again, he's playing and doing well. So this was a tense saga that basically ran over 2 windows. And when Amorim was still at the club, Mainoo felt forced to go somewhere and get game time. But remember one key point, it was only ever on a loan. So Mainoo didn't give up on Manchester United. He sort of just gave up on Amorim and wanted to go to Napoli to get that game time before the World Cup. Now he's happy at Manchester United. There's not going to be any exits. So everything's back where we were in kind of the summer period, where Manchester United are prepared to extend Mainoo. And as long as he keeps playing and doing well like he's currently performing under Michael Carrick, there is a fair chance that that contract extension gets over the line, which I think now Amorim has departed will suit all parties and prove popular with the fan base.
Yeah, I'm hoping Kobbie Mainoo will sign that contract, and I think he will, but that'll be that'll be a good player to secure their long-term future, because I think he's got a huge future ahead of him, and so good to see him playing. And, you know, the first 2 Premier League starts of the season, Arsenal and City, you win both games. I know it's not just down to him, but it's one thing, you know, coming back into the side, but it's another thing proving why you should have been in the side in the first place. And I think 2 good displays from Kobbie Mainoo there. I want to ask you a little bit about the centre-back and full-back area before we kind of finish up on the manager names. And there's a couple of comments actually coming through in the chat, and I'm going to bring some super chats in a second, about are Manchester United got any names on their full-back list, because we know that they're interested in full-backs. Is there any centre-backs in particular looking at? Or is it early days, Ben? Is there anything you can tell us around them positions?
Yeah, in terms of the defence, speaking broadly, Upamecano was one that they were keeping an eye on. There were some exploratory talks with the camp of Marcos Senesi as well, who's a bit of an older option and a free agent during the summer. I sense at this time that Senesi is prioritising a move abroad, and Juventus seems to be the club that are advancing there. But of course, clubs outside the Premier League can pre-agree in January. Premier League clubs can't. So it's more normal that you would have earlier European suitors and later Premier League clubs that enter the race. Jacobo Ramon is the other one, and maybe he goes this summer, even though he's only been at Como for a season. The only thing there is I think Real Madrid are already quite tempted to trigger a pretty low buyback clause, which I believe is only in the region of 7 million euros. So there's a few defensive targets that are bubbling at the moment. Not hearing that much on fullback, and I think one of the reasons why is that, as you alluded to, Dorgu is performing, and I'm not sure they really know yet this early whether, like Amorim, they want to add a left wing back, or if they want somebody that's a bit more switchable. And I don't think at this point they even know if they want a starting fullback or a younger squad kind of player. And if you go down the left and you choose to add a younger one, Diego Leon is doing really well. Manchester United feel his development is actually ahead of track, and they don't want to stifle his pathway. So fullback is a little bit more complicated now. It was clearer under Ruben Amorim because he absolutely wanted a fullback, and he wanted somebody predominantly on the left-hand side. And Semenya was to an extent baked into that, even though, having lost out, Man United sources are adamant that Semenya was a winger and not a fullback, but he could, of course, have played in that position as well. So there was more clarity over fullback than centre-back when Amorim was still at the club. Now it seems there's more targets at centre-back than full-back.
Interesting stuff. I mean, we have a super chat in from Red Devil Packer 99 saying swap deal with Barca for centre mid possibly, and I think they're on about Marc Casado here because he's been mentioned a few times. Is there anything in that rumour, Ben?
Yeah, I've heard that one as well. I haven't made that many calls in it at this stage. I know Manchester United sent scouts to watch the player, actually not last summer, but in January. So he will have been on their radar before this kind of new sporting-led model fully materialised, because some of the arrivals, obviously, of various figures were either later or they were there, but they were not in their current roles. So that could potentially be one to watch, but not a great deal of information to add at this point. And it's not really a name that I'm hearing yet amongst Manchester United insiders that I've been speaking to.
Okay, we'll have to watch that one come the summer. We have Mystician saying, I would hate if City gets a free hand on Livramento and we don't even try. Livramento has always been my top target for a fullback because he's so good and he plays both sides, and I just don't understand why we've never gone in for him. But you know, you can only follow what the news is, where the news is, and it doesn't seem like we're linked to him that heavily.
Tino Livramento is somebody that Ross Wilson is trying to get to extend, and it's one of Newcastle's biggest priorities. But Man City are still the club to watch, and they will be looking for a predominantly right-sided fullback to come in. I come back to what I said before. I think the answer why Man United and Livramento hasn't materialised is, first and foremost, he falls into the category of players that, if he's to leave Newcastle, he wants one of those instant projects that he can win silverware with and ultimately play Champions League. And he's got that, of course, at the moment at Newcastle. And the second thing is exactly the point that I've just made, that they were looking more at left-sided fullbacks under Ruben Amorim. So let's see whether that changes now. And if they focus on the right-hand side, I doubt a player like Livramento will not have been discussed internally, but maybe Manchester City are viewed as the front runners if he doesn't sign a Newcastle deal and ends up therefore being sold. Of course, he's still well contracted there though, so even without an extension, I would imagine that Newcastle will fight to keep, and this might not necessarily be an easy transfer to pull off in summer 2026.
Let's see how Livramento gets on. He's definitely a quality player. I mean, Amit has said, if you've got those names out in public, surely we would get a duo or one of them. We also have Amit saying, Ben, could you enlighten us if Bruno is staying or not? Well, I'm assuming you put that in before I asked Ben about Bruno Fernandes, so you can, if you've only just tuned in, you can go and rewind in the show. We did speak about Bruno and his contract situation. And then just kind of finish on Ben, I just want to ask you a little bit more about the manager situation. I know it's super early doors, but there's a big discussion in the fan base at the moment on whether Manchester United can realistically pursue the likes of a Tuchel or an Enrique or a, I know this name hasn't been mentioned at all, but like a Conte type manager because of their personalities and their want to control what is going on. And Manchester United currently have a very structured sporting model, with Wilcox very much involved. Are Manchester United, do you think, able to go for that really strong type of personality that does want a lot of control? For example, Unai Emery is another name that's kind of come into that as well, where fans think that'd be a great manager for Manchester United, but would they be able to work within the sporting model?
Yeah, I don't think Unai Emery is looking to leave Aston Villa, and I also think that, as you allude to, Emery has got total control. He's basically given a blank page, and he's so heavily invested and backed by the ownership that might be quite difficult in a more collaborative model. I don't see them changing the model. I think it was a statement to name Amorim as head coach off the back of Ten Hag as manager, and it was very intentional to remove the veto that Ten Hag had when Amorim came in, to U-turn on that and go back to a manager that has a lot of say and control. I'm not sure it would necessarily be what they want. With Roberto De Zerbi, don't forget at Brighton, he was working very effectively in a hugely collaborative model. And with Thomas Tuchel, believe it or not, under Clearlake Bowley, the newer Chelsea owners at the time when he was at the club, he didn't want to get that involved in recruitment. He wanted a say, but he definitely didn't want to be in all the meetings, and he definitely didn't want to be involved in stuff that distracted him from the football field. So they're big personalities, but Tuchel and De Zerbi, for me anyway, are head coaches, not managers. So they could fit within this Manchester United model. The challenge, I suppose, and Amorim would argue this, is not so much the long-term planning and how you fit in, because most managers are okay with that, and they like these wider teams using data and sports science to pick all the targets for the future. Where you run into problems is when the manager goes, look, we've got to change course here because we've got an injury or we're not playing very well. We've got to do something rash. We've got to do something urgent. We've got to do something for the now. Forget your plan, forget your strategy, forget your collaboration. Just get me what I need now, because we're firefighting due to bad form or injury or lack of chemistry because we unexpectedly made a mistake in the market. And that's where a Tuchel or a De Zerbi will really fight hard, as Glasner showed as well, his displeasure at Mark Gahey going and doing so just a day before a game. So that freedom to challenge is supposed to be there in every model. And if you hire a manager that doesn't bring it to you, like a Tuchel or a De Zerbi, you've got too many yes people within your business. So I think they'll want somebody quite fiery and passionate and confrontational. And I don't think that automatically means that they won't fit in with this more collaborative model. But as ever, these big models tend to work when things are going right. And then when they go wrong, you sort of see people's true colours. And that's why Amorim and Jason Wilcox fell out. There'll be two sides to that story. So in short, I don't think Man United will be put off by hiring a big personality, as long as they feel they'll be comfortable with the head coach, not manager title.
Well, yeah, because it's interesting that you say that, because it felt like that's something they liked about Ruben Amorim initially. We spoke about the Sir Jim Ratcliffe, Amorim telling him to F off and all that. And they spoke about that quite nonchalantly, as if that, like just telling your boss to F off. Like it seemed like something they liked. And then when, like you say, when things start to go badly, then things go wrong. And it's one of them where, for example, Michael Carrick's getting so much plaudit right now and everybody's really happy and there's so many positive stories coming about him because he's doing well. If he went and lost 5 games in a row, it'd probably swing the other way. So when things are going well, everything's amazing. When they're not, it's not. So that's kind of where you're at with Manchester United. But in the long term, I feel like this is just my personal point of view. I mean, I'm on the side of let's not completely rule Michael Carrick out. If he does absolutely amazingly from now until the end of the season, of course you've got to consider him, and I think you've got to interview him like other candidates, like you mentioned. But I'm also, as a United fan, I'm like, this is a real swinging doors moment for United. I think we should be going all out as one of the biggest clubs in the world to get the best manager in the world. And for me, that is that Enrique type of manager. And I know it looks like he's probably going to extend it PSG, but why can't United go and have a crack at it? It's Manchester United at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think Luis Enrique, remember, contrary to reports, is contracted till 2027, not 2026. And as a result, even if nothing happens at PSG, he's still expected to see out 2026, 2027. Man United can't, at this point, give a plan of Carrick. They can watch what he does, but we've only had 2 games, 2 brilliant games, but Ruud van Nistelrooy had some good games as caretaker as well, albeit against slightly weaker opposition. My team, Leicester, actually, he beat twice in the Cup and in the league as well. But now is the real test, because you look at home to Fulham, they should win it. All due respect to Fulham, it's Manchester United, it's Old Trafford. They've just beaten the league leaders. They've just won a Manchester derby. They should be beating Fulham at home. Tottenham at home is very winnable, and so is West Ham away. And suddenly you've won 5 games on the bounce, and then you start thinking, okay, we're going to run this manager process. We're going to look at elite names. But Carrick is in incredible form. Carrick is basically in the form table, top of the Premier League if he wins 5 games in a row in likelihood, because it's that kind of season where everyone's seemingly winning one, drawing one, losing one, except for Arsenal at the moment. So he can play his way into the role. But right now, I would imagine, having asked around, that there will be a list being drawn up of other names, and they will, of course, all have a lot more experience than Michael Carrick.
Well, let's see what happens. I'm excited to explore that list of names when the interview process does begin on our shows. But Ben, we'll get through the Super Chats and I'm going to ask you for your prediction. So we have Goldfridge. It says, Ben, how come Tuchel is so liked by Ineos, considering how he left his 4 previous clubs after maximum 2 seasons due to fighting with the board?
Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily as true as you might think. It's really easy to paint it that way. Sometimes when a manager gets sacked or departs, the club, because they stay, and the fans of that club, because they stay, get a sort of spun aftermath narrative. And if you kind of look at Dortmund, he was very liked. He goes to PSG. That's an incredibly political club that can be cutthroat. Chelsea, he wins the Champions League and then new owners come in. It was a difficult transitional period. And I think a lot of his departure at Chelsea was down to not wanting to be overly invested in recruitment. And at that point, Chelsea didn't have a model. They just had Todd Boehly as the sporting director. So they needed the manager to input. And he was frustrated because he wanted to focus on the football. And that's kind of what he was used to under Roman Abramovich. So Tuchel is an interesting character. He can be very divisive, but I don't think people are looking at his CV and put off. I think they feel like he's still a very modern coach. He's got a lot of experience in different countries. He'll now know all of the England players as well that play for a club like Man United, and therefore the public perception fans have of Tuchel and the narrative around him is not necessarily mirrored by the industry, because there's barely anyone I speak to privately within the industry that doesn't really rate him as a coach, and that's including knowing all the skeletons in the closet with other clubs as well. And for me, I think, as I say, he left PSG with a lot of sympathy. He left Chelsea with a lot of love as well. Bayern was a little bit tougher, and it was a surprise he didn't last very long, but it didn't damage his reputation because he walked straight into the England job.
I mean, with Tuchel, it's an interesting one. I feel like it could either be the biggest hit or just not get off the ground the way I would want it to. But I mean, that's why I'm not in charge of making the decisions at Manchester United. It's a huge decision for the board this summer on what manager it's going to be, because it's going to be huge for Manchester United, especially if they get that Champions League football. Look,
players, by the way, love Tuchel.
Oh, really?
Players absolutely adore him because he's hands-on. He's right in the middle of training. He protects them. There's a lot of one-on-one time. The instructions are really clear. So anybody that I've spoken to, particularly Chelsea sources that have played under Thomas Tuchel, they almost tell you that the training is sort of better than all the other bits. And yet that translates to things like a Champions League with Chelsea on the field. But it's that 5 days training a week, the culture, the atmosphere, the one-on-one management, the improving players, the passion, the hands-on nature. They absolutely love him.
I do love the passion that he brings to the job. I still remember that handshake with Antonio Conte. See, I'd love my manager getting involved with stuff like that. I love it. I loved it when we had Jose Mourinho for that, kind of character that you get with him.
Yeah.
It is something that the fan base can buy into. But, the most important thing is being able to go and win and play good football doing so. Winning, absolutely. I think Thomas Tuchel is a winner. Good football, here and there. That's just my opinion, though. So we'll see what happens with Tuchel. It's definitely one to watch. Go on.
Just on Mohamed Keita, he's going to Al Hilal, which was the other club that we're looking this month. So, as I say, no chance of Manchester United now, but I don't think there was ever a chance anyway, because I'm not aware that Manchester United made a meaningful approach. So it looks like he's off to Saudi.
Yeah, I've just seen that. That young of an age as well. No disrespect to Saudi, because, I know they're trying to build something over there, but that surprised me when I just saw that pop up there. But yeah, Manchester United out of that race now.
I think Man United, again, named, used a little bit in this negotiation. Chuck in a club that perhaps forces the Saudi side to panic a little bit and pay higher. And that's the difference as well in terms of the valuations. I think it's 30 million euros, which is a huge number, whereas other clubs that have inquired, and I think it was more Chelsea and Liverpool for the summer rather than now, they were looking at about 10, 12, 15 million euros max. So it looks like there's been a bit of a bidding war there, but I'm not aware that Manchester United were ever seriously or significantly in that race, despite reports.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's one of them where, especially, in these type of windows, Man United's name can get dragged into a lot of different transfer sagas that never really get off the ground from Manchester United's side. But good luck to him. Good luck to him. Last thing, Ben, I want to ask you, score prediction for Fulham. Because we know you're mystic with these sort of things. But I think you're yet to get it dead on, but this could be the week.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm usually 1 goal out. And against Bournemouth, it was 1 goal out, turning what I thought would be a win into a draw. And it was the other way around against Arsenal. Here, I think it's going to be similar to the Manchester derby. I think Man United are going to start keeping clean sheets at Old Trafford. So I'm going to predict a win and a 2-0 scoreline, which is quite conservative for me because I'm normally 2-2, 4-3, whatever. But I think Man United are going to be consistent. Man United are going to score a couple of goals. Man United are going to find a way at home to win these next few games. And I think the difference in the second half of the season will not obviously only be the new signings really developing that chemistry and getting going. Bruno, Cunha, players with proven goal-scoring records in the Premier League before Man United. If they all get going at the same time, goals won't be a problem. But I think the big thing, the big difference if they go on a run will be clean sheets, and I expect them to get another one at home to Fulham. So 2-0.
I'm going 2-0 as well, Ben. I was thinking that earlier. So let's both go 2-0 and hopefully we can come back on the show this time next week and be like, yes! I mean, I'll take that as well, to be honest with you. Any sort of win will do. But I would like a win where my heart isn't in my mouth for the whole game. It's amazing when you get that last minute winner. Like, there's no better feeling. But it's testing me, honestly. That Arsenal game, wow. It was really kind of up and down throughout that second half. But I'm hoping Fulham's like a nice, relaxed win. However, Fulham are a good side and you don't just bulldoze them that often. So let's see what happens when they pull up to Old Trafford. But look, everyone, we'll be live on Sunday on the United Stand for Countdown to Kick Off at 12 p.m. The watch-along will start at 1:30 p.m. And then, I mean, To start your weekend, though, you've got Bundesliga on That's Football with a 7:15 Cologne versus Wolfsburg live match with Goldbridge on That's Football. You watch the match and Goldbridge. It's brilliant. Get interactive with that. And then on Saturday, there's so many watch-alongs for you guys to get involved with. There's 3 p.m. Leeds versus Arsenal on That's Football. That's a big one. Can they bounce back, or are they going to start to crumble away? 5:30, you have Chelsea versus West Ham. Race for top 5 is on. And then to follow that race for top 5, you have a big one, Liverpool versus Newcastle at 8 p.m. What a weekend of football, eh, Ben?
Ooh, incredible, yeah. It's just non-stop. Champions League, by the way. I know Man United weren't in it. Brilliant yesterday.
Yeah.
All the games, changing table. It just shows you what Manchester United can look forward to. And that Trubin goalkeeper header to send Benfica through against Real Madrid are just an outstanding football moment.
I couldn't believe it. I jumped off my couch, and when you seen Jose running down the touchline, it was brilliant. And do you know what? Them moments in football, they are the best, and it made me really jealous that Manchester United wasn't part of it last night. But next season we're on. Next season we're on, Ben. Anyway, fingers crossed. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. I really do appreciate it. Smash a like on the video for Ben. Thank you, Ben, so much for joining us and bringing us your insights as per usual. Already excited for the next show to debrief United's win against Fulham.
Look forward to it. See you next week.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and see you on the next one.